Yesterday we talked a little bit about an update coming that would be today in World War II. It wasn't going to be anything that was going to be an insane title update or something like that. That is still going to be reserved for later on in the month, presumably next week in the later portions there, or maybe like a day or two before the launch of DLC 1 for PlayStation 4, but across the board for everybody at that point in time, because we're going to be getting a ton of stuff included in there that everybody can play around with. So maybe anywhere around, say, next Tuesday to about the Sunday to Monday point in time. Maybe even they hold it off until they launch a DLC 1 on the 30th for all platforms, but I can't imagine that would happen, simply because that would just be way too much to process for players that have to download it, and also it wouldn't give any time to work around bugs if they pop up from this new update. So that said, we're gonna be getting that major update within about a week to a week and a half's time, but today we ended up getting a little bit more clarity on some of those things that will be coming at a later point. We also got a hotfix to the game itself, in which it was focused around some weapon tuning, some rebalancing of some weapons that you might be very pleased with, but some you might not be. So that's it. We're gonna be breaking down these 6 weapons that ended up getting the weapon tuning here for this, talking a little bit about the extra information we got coming out of this, and also there were a few map changes, but we'll mention those in passing because they're not anything too insane. They're not like going to change how you perceive the game itself in terms of the maps across all modes. They're very specific changes to a certain set of modes in the game. But that said, let's jump into the notes here for these weapon tunings. Now, all these weapons have once again been on the table of discussion before, and those will include the FG42, the Grease Gun, the Kar98K, the Lee Enfield, the Combat Shotgun, and the Sawed-Off Shotgun. So those are the 6 weapons in question with this one, and we're gonna be talking a little bit about each of these in depth, showing you guys some comparisons for some of these, and just letting you guys know the relative information. But starting at the top, the FG42 is one that was a hot topic debate for many players for a long time. At launch, it was something that was considered incredibly overpowered. Now it's something that seems a little bit too weakened, maybe was nerfed a little too much, but now with this most recent update that you can jump on and check out for yourselves, the FG42 ended up getting a recoil buff with a slight fire rate buff. Now, to give you guys an accurate representation of this, you can check out the side-by-side comparisons on screen right now. On the left is before patch, after is on the right, and for the recoil itself, it's something that is more manageable. It just stays a little bit more stationary, whereas it doesn't kick up as much as it did in the past. That's something that I really do enjoy in terms of this, but when it comes to the fire rates, this is something that almost is rather deceiving, because when you think about a fire rate buff, you're going to think about something that is noticeable, something that you can really tell what is going to happen here, and you can make a noticeable difference. You might even not need to put on a rapid fire attachment or anything like that, but at its core, it does specify that it is a slight adjustment for fire rate on the FG. And I don't think that that could have been any more of a designation of slight, because if you watch your ammo counter when firing this off, you'll notice that it is probably a hair quicker than it was before. Not anything too substantial, but it is something that is still technically increased ever so slightly. I'd maybe put this on the rounds of, say, maybe 5 to 10 shots per minute compared to the previous rate of fire. So it's nothing insanely substantial that you'll notice, say, maybe in-game, but if you compare them side by side, matching frames up, you will notice there is a very slight difference. So that's what was changed to the FG42. The recoil buff, of course, the biggest key portion out of this, but it brings it probably in more line with what we saw, maybe not necessarily a middle grounds, but getting closer to a middle grounds of the launch FG42 and the last patch FG42. The next thing up on the table is the Grease Gun, in which that ended up getting a recoil adjustment to give players more control, and an ADS transition time buff, meaning that you can just bring it up to ADS a little bit quicker than you could previously. Now this one, if you watch the side-by-side comparisons of the Grease Gun, it's not something that you might think, well, maybe this post-patch version is better, in the sense that the recoil kicks a little bit higher than that of what it did before, but where it was changed is in the, once again, way that it makes it easier to manage. Before, there was a degree of randomness to the recoil pattern in which you could spray left, right, center, up, and horizontal all in seriously one single sweep. You didn't really have any say on how the recoil would be controllable, but now in place of that degree of randomness is what seems to be, from my initial testing, just a vertical kick on this, and though it becomes once again, a little bit tougher in the sense that it kicks up farther. It is a lot easier to control by simply just holding down your right thumbstick a little bit, and of course a grip will help out. What you're seeing on screen is the bare base weapon of this, save for the variants of the candy, but there's no attachments on it. So you'll be able to control it a lot more with a grip, but also if you end up holding down your right stick, you'll be able to counter that recoil slightly as well. Now the biggest one that you'll probably hear out of this is the COD 98K. This was something that the ADS transition time, or just aim down sight time, and this is where a lot of the conversation comes to, because the COD 98K before had the fastest ADS time of any of the sniper rifles, and therefore was the weapon of choice for a lot of snipers. And a lot of the times, it really frustrated players because close quarters were still incredibly easy for snipers, long range was easier, especially with the COD 98K, getting that scope up, and a lot of the stuff that you relatively hear about the sniping is overpowered debacle that we hear almost every year in some capacity. But the COD 98K was once again statistically and notably better than all the other aim down sight times with other snipers. So this was brought down to be a little bit more manageable and comparable to the other sniper rifles within the game. So this is something that, once again, side-by-side comparison, you might see it's actually kind of deceiving once again, because it's not all that much of a difference when you take a look at it frame by frame and you take a look at the statistical properties, but it feels tremendously different. That's something that I honestly, before this patch went live, I was getting some footage once again to compare before and after, but I was doing a lot of scoping in and out. I probably did it for a good 5 minutes just on the COD 98K, and whenever I came back, though of course once again it matches up in a sense that it's not all that much different, it does feel different. So that's something you kind of have to get a hold of as a player, but that's something that was adjusted once again, and the COD 98K was nerfed in that sense. Now the Lee Enfield is something in which the transition time was kind of the opposite. We ended up getting a buff for that ADS speed, and if you take a look at it once again side by side with the COD 98K, it's something that, from my preliminary testing, once again, it brings it almost to inline and potentially 1 frame faster than that of the COD 98K scope in time. So that 1 frame could come down to some error on my end, but having seen this already and tried matching it up, it seems like I've gotten frames down, so it might be 1 frame faster, but in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't really account for all that much. It's not going to make the Lee Enfield probably the best sniper rifle compared to the COD 98K. I don't know if it'll be like that, but for the time being, these seem to bring themselves in line and comparable to each other. Now, the final 2 weapons today deal with the shotgun classification within World War II, and they're ones that some people weren't really too fond of whenever one got changed previously, that being the combat shotgun, and we'll talk about that one first. The combat shotgun was buffed, whereas the other shotguns previously were nerfed, but whenever we take a look at this update today, it finally got the nerf that it was supposed to have, but that only got a slight max damage range nerf, but it still is overall better than what it was at launch. So this last update we had probably about a month ago, if I'm not mistaken, ended up buffing this, but now it kind of tones that back ever so slightly, and if the wording of slight is any indication as compared to what it was with the FG42, it's still going to be the best shotgun overall, but it just has that ever so slightly tuning to the range. That said, the sawed-off shotgun is the second shotgun in question here, in which that actually got a decent amount done to it. It ended up getting a max and mid damage range buff, to which you'll be able to have a little bit more distance there whenever you take your shots. There was a buff to the number of pellets to kill, and there was also a reload time buff and a hip spread nerf. So that said, 3 positives, 1 negative. The nerf, once again, widening that hip fire, but the reload time is much needed on this thing. That's definitely one of the biggest things that was crucial to this, but overall, that was something that hopefully brings this in line more so with the others. Now, the M30 and the toggle action have yet to be mentioned, so that's something that these still are on the chopping block in question. Will they be having any adjustments to them? But for the time being, that rounds out the 6 weapons that ended up getting changed within this weapon tuning update. Now, like I said, there were 2 things to the maps that were changed, and that's once again just very minor stuff that probably you don't care all that much about. But just to cover the bases, the defensive start spawns and SND on Saint-Marie du Mont were changed around, and then we also got a moved capture the flag position on London docks. But other than that, everything else stayed the same. Other things in the talks as of recently dealt with health regeneration changes, that going to be finalized and adjusted, coming probably in this later title update later in next week or the week after for the launch of DLC 1. We also end up getting to see Winter Carrington return. That's going to be something that jumps back into to the regular map rotation and free to everybody starting next week in all map playlists. So you'll be seeing Winter Carrington here popping up, so a 10th map for those of you guys that want something new. Though it might not be your favorite map, it is still something here that you get for free, even if you don't have the season pass, that is. So that's gonna be something that is added in as well. And then also after that, we can end up seeing all sorts of different things coming once again in that title update like we detailed before. New modes, new playlists, new features, new events, new weapon DLC, all kinds of cool stuff will be coming in the next couple of weeks. But for right now, this is just a little teaser of the game to come for the next few weeks and months following. So that said, hopefully you guys enjoyed. I'd love to get your thoughts and feedback down there in the comment section down below. Of all of these things, what do you guys like the most out of these? What of these 6 weapon changes do you enjoy the most? Do you think that there should be some more thrown in here? What would you guys like to see changed, not changed? And one thing that I also want to mention is the M1 actually wasn't touched. That big whole debate on the M1 being overpowered, not touched in the slightest here within this update. So that's a good thing, I think. I definitely enjoy the M1, and of course, it's a very situational weapon like we talked about, but still, nonetheless, let me know your thoughts down there in the comment section down below. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, make sure you drop a like down below, and of course, if you guys are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding Call of Duty World War II updates, patches, news, information like this stuff, and of course, best tips, class setups, all that good stuff. We got you covered here up on the channel. So that said, if you guys want to stay up to date with all that, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. And finally, if you guys want to follow me over on Twitter, that's the best place to get connected with me outside of YouTube. Practically live on Twitter, so if you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, link is down there in the description below. But all that said, now to the way, I hope you guys had a fantastic day. Thanks so much for watching. Mine is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care, and peace.